Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Gaming the System, the podcast where three intersectional feminists examine gaming through a feminist lens. Today, I'm your host, Matt, and I'm with my friend Jem.
Hello.
Hello, Jem, and Alex.
Hello.
Hi, Alex. We're continuing our series on... This is going to be semi about censorship, because we're going to be talking about how do you mitigate the damage of toxic people, shitty behaviour, harassing dickheads. How do we mitigate them without silencing them or taking away their rights? Because there has to be a way, because we've got to find it. Before we get started, if you want to support us, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem for some exclusive content, or you can go to PayPal and send us something via wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. So, with that out of the way, there's a Gamergate, so-called Gamergate Part 2 going on at the moment, where it boils down to a community of most likely men coordinating to harass a game studio about so-called wokeism and cancel culture. This is a phenomenon that there are a million of it every day, and it is fueled by the ruling class and the media organizations that they own, because it keeps everyone from working together to stop things that are actually damaging to people's lives. So the first question I want us to explore is to what extent, if any extent, these people should be censored or their behaviour should be censored or disallowed.
It's a good question, I think, but it's difficult to know how effective censorship can be as a mitigation method. I think you've got to kind of come at it with multiple options. There are many ways to fight a fire. Are there not? Depending on the type of fire. Yes. So I think one that doesn't make the person involved feel like they're not being, well, this is going to sound really weird, but they need to feel like they're being understood and heard for them to be at a place where they're going to be open enough to maybe come round to a different point of view. If customer service training is anything to go by, from what I remember. But yeah, basically, if you've got someone who is steadfast in their opinion and is not going to sway from it, and anything you say is just not, it's just falling on deaf ears, then like you need to find a different way of getting that message through to them. And yeah, I mean, obviously censorship, exclusion from like airing those views is one way to do it, but whether it will actually be effective in the long term is an interesting question to consider. Just trying to think of what other ways there could actually possibly even be that wouldn't lead to like resentment from the individual involved. Because obviously you could think about maybe, like, this is going to sound really workplace orientated, but training, awareness training from people with lived experience, the people that they're talking about as being woke. If they actually were to spend some time with the people they were calling woke, or people they wanted to just get rid of and not involve them in anything, they'd actually see that really we're just all human beings and we have perfect rights, and and we're all completely valid in existing and being a part of the human race, and that actually you just need to think about things differently. But I'm waffling now. But yeah, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, definitely.
Yeah, it is a tricky one. I do not think that censorship is the way to go, because I do think that conversation and communication is the way forward, and that can't happen if you're silencing people. And for a long time in my life, I was like, we don't agree with their views, we shouldn't hear them. You know, we should say as a society, we don't want to hear this. But I don't think that that is a way to resolve the problem. And for me, I think that, so, I mean, I come from like a privileged background. I don't come from a wealthy family, but I come from a comfortable family. I'm educated. I went to university. I have I live in a nice part of the country, and I've always been able to believe that I can get what I need to get in order to live a comfortable existence. And so I recognize that that makes me hugely privileged. And I also only recognized my ableism when I was in contact with people that had lived disabilities that they were living with and dealing with on a day-to-day basis, and hearing those stories and experiencing those lives, through people like yourself, Alex, and it's many other people that have come into my life as I have broadened myself in that way. And I think, for me, that's been a way that I've increasingly understood the situation, and therefore I've been much more able to go into a scenario and recognize the kind of challenges that other people who are not me and do not look like me and do not come from my background, or do come from my background but have other things going on for them, and recognizing how the world might be for them in that situation. But even though I've always been brought up to be, mindful and compassionate and empathetic and all of the positive things, I do think that I have learned a lot just in the last few years that I hadn't learned up until then. And I think that it's just, communication is the only way that we can genuinely move on and engage. And if you don't allow people to express their fears, which is essentially what I believe a lot of these negative attitudes are, then you can't possibly even begin to tackle them. You can't possibly begin to say, you don't need to be as afraid, you're not going to fall off the edge of the world when you go on a boat. We need to understand why somebody is afraid, why somebody is worried, why somebody is angry, in order to work out how to fix that. And this, to me, that what we're talking about now is just a factor of the culture wars. And the culture wars are about pitting different sides against one another to divide us and conquer us. Because if we're busy fighting over, how many women there are in computer games today, then we're not recognizing the fact that the Conservatives have presided over the biggest movement of finances from the public purse into the private one, and other things like that we're busy. It's distracting, and it is just, not to put too not to overstate it, but I genuinely believe this. It is fundamentally problematic for democracy. these situations, and we have to find a way of dealing with them going forward. Sorry, it's just I'm a bit ranty about this subject.
Yeah, it's exhausting. Just going, we're trying to help. Just because I think that's a fundamental difference between, say, people who want diversity. We want people's lives to be better. I don't care. I want everyone's life to be better. I want everyone to have access to free healthcare. I think everyone should. No one should ever go without food or drink. No one should ever spend a single night on the streets. All these things, I want people's lives to be better. People like the Gamergate people, they want people's lives to be worse. And this is a fundamental problem with like culture wars like this, is that these Gamergate people go, I would gladly live on the street as long as that black person lives in the gutter. And you're going, no, we can all live in houses. Okay, good. No. If it's a choice between I have a house and that black person has a house, I would rather live on the street as long as he lives in the gutter. And the way that I think that these kinds of people can be overcome is you need to radically improve their lives, tangibly improve their lives, so that what they're arguing about ceases to matter as much. Because the fuel for this is them going, oh, everything's getting worse, everything's shit, and everything's getting worse because of wokery and council culture and all of that. Whereas things are getting worse because the government is sucking all of the wealth out of the public and public services, putting it into the pockets of the 0.1%. That's why things are getting worse. That's why the NHS is deteriorating. That's why children are going hungry. That's why people can't heat their houses. Things are getting worse and worse and worse and worse because of the ruling class inflicting that on us. And so it ends up to, when we're arguing with them, they always have, things are getting worse. And that proves that we're right. Whereas what you need to do is you need to make their lives better, going, okay, you hate having more women on TV, but your rent has gone down, your pay has gone up. When you broke your ankle, the ambulance was there in 10 minutes, and you get to have more holiday. You're only working 4 days a week now. I think that's probably the only way to get them to care less about the conspiracy theories and the hatred and the anger. Just go, I've made your life better. Now just enjoy your life and leave everyone else alone.
Yeah, it goes right back to the really simple idea that basically a bully is someone whose problem is themselves and not you. So I think that's what it stems down to, basically. Is just everyone's in a really shitty place with their mental health, probably. And we're all just taking it out on each other. Yeah. So, but I really feel that mental health is still very much stigmatized. And just taught, like, actually today I overheard a really nice conversation. I was coming out of the leisure centre and I heard two of the male staff having a chat, and one of them was saying, oh, that's when I was going through some really tough times in my personal life. And then they were just having a really genuine chat about mental health, and I was like, that's such a nice thing to kind of eavesdrop on as I was leaving. Not like deliberately, I just heard it. But I was just like, oh, that's so good, because especially two young men as well. And I'm like, that is hope. People are talking about their mental health.
Yeah, that's so good. Positive. That's such a nice thing. I know I had a similar thing where I overheard a conversation between two men, where one of them was sort of saying, "Oh yeah, I had to take a day off work yesterday because for my mental health," and they were able to actually talk about it. And I think, we know that like male suicide is ridiculously high, and it doesn't have to be. It's something that we can tackle. And I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head, Matt. I think, that I remember a study that was done. I don't know any of the details about it, but there was a study that was done with rats where they put rats into a like a little rat house, a little rat town, and they all lived in their little rat town, and they kept adding more rats. And once the rats kind of got overcrowded, then they ended up fighting over food. They ended up going off with all different, being very promiscuous. They just got really stressed and really unhealthy and really aggressive, and I think that obviously we're not rats, but I think the same does apply to people. When we are under a lot of pressure, when our mental health is threatened, which it has been because we had the pandemic. Well, we had the financial crash. We had the pandemic. We had Brexit between those two, didn't we? Then we had the pandemic, and now we've got a war in Europe. We've got all this horrendous news coming in from Gaza, and the Princess of Wales is just really bad at editing photos. So this is an extremely stressful and intense time. The cost of living crisis is affecting everybody. It doesn't matter where you are. I mean, it's affecting everybody. Some people are not able to, feed themselves, but other people are, having to make other changes in their lives. So no matter where you are in the hierarchy, or the financial hierarchy, you're affected by it. And so I think, everyone's cross, everyone's angry. And then you have the politicians and the powers that be trying to distract our attention from the fact that it's their fault, that they did this to us, and that they're continuing to do this and choosing not to have an election because they don't have to, and they're continuing to put us through this crap by going, oh, look over there, it's those people that are coming on those boats to this country, it's indigenous populations, it's too many women in computer games. Blatantly, those are not the issues. It's really exhausting, Matt. I think you're right. But if we can make life better for everybody, and that's, then we all win, don't we?
We do.
Another example, because we were talking about anti-trans people earlier. You say you want to be safe from sexual assault, okay? I want you to be safe from sexual assault.
Thanks, Matt.
And then if we can actually do things to make that happen, which is everything about society needs to change for that to happen. And we say to them, we want the thing that will work. We don't support trans women because we want you to be sexually assaulted. We support trans women because they're people and they just want to live their lives. And I also don't want you to be sexually assaulted. Those two things are true. And the only way to get those people to just relax and stop just dragging us down is to improve their lives. And when it comes to bringing it back to gaming, how diversity makes things better. Diversity makes creativity easier. A group of 10 people from different countries are going to come up with wildly more creative stuff than 10 white men.
I also think it brings it back to like what I was saying earlier about, that because I have been exposed to people from different walks of life, I am more able to understand and connect with that and with lived experiences for other people. And I think, games, we've talked so much about how deeply they affect us, but like being able to sit and play a game with a character that isn't like you, that doesn't live a life just like yours, that faces different challenges, is such a good immersive way to walk a mile in their shoes. It's such an opportunity to explore what life might be like if you had been born in a different place, in a different time, in a different body, and I think it's a way to do that safely and securely. And so I think it absolutely is. It's not just important that we have that kind of diversity as, because we want to represent people, but it's important that we have that diversity so that people can explore those different worlds, those different selves.
Definitely, yeah. I was doing some reflection while you were talking, Jem, about how, I think I have managed to open up my ideas of how other people experience the world as well, just in the last maybe even 5 years since I started moving into disability advocacy. I used to work in heritage, and that's a very, very, very closeted, bubbled sort of profession, like most professions in this country. But I think really, I was even thinking back to school times, and I just think I was so closeted, I don't know if that's the right word, but basically even when I thought about myself as a disabled person, I didn't even want to associate with other disabled children, because I was like, well, I'm not like them. I was kind of in between somewhere. And that's just my internalised ableism shining through, really. But I'm glad to say that now, obviously, I feel quite differently. But at the time, because that's how that environment was kind of moulding me to be, and like growing up, that's the environment we're all sort of moulded into, is thinking a certain way about our lives and not really thinking about other people's lives, and understanding that actually it is okay to be a part of all these different communities and to accept those parts of ourselves. But yeah, I just think it says a lot about particularly our school systems and education systems, and how they could be more open and inclusive, but they're not very much at the moment. Or at least I don't know if they are now, but I doubt they've changed much since I've been to school.
I think I occasionally go down rabbit holes before I'm able to stop myself. I was thinking about Eton, for example, this private school. It's been going for over 500 years, and those strata of private schools, the boys that go in there and the men that come out, they are the architects of all the woes of the world, because it's not just English children, it's the royalties and the ruling classes of the world send their children to these schools where they are taught that they deserve to rule. I've just got an alarm going off. Can one of you jump in?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. And I think somebody wrote a book actually about the sort of those kind of schools, and about how they just turn out people who are not compassionate, who are sent away from their families when they're just babies, little 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, whatever, and they're sent away from home, and then they're sort of brought up in this unusual environment that the vast majority of the population are not exposed to, and trained as though they're going, to be leaders. And and they might have skills that are valuable for leadership, but they don't have compassion. They haven't met people from different walks of life. And I mean, that is one of the things, I went to a state school, and I really valued that, because I went to school with kids that went on to go to Cambridge and become doctors, and I went to school with kids who left at 15 before they'd even got their results, and went into crime, went into more vocational careers. I met people from all walks of life. I mean, I live in a very wealthy area. And so the least well-off people were probably still better off than a lot of people in the country, but I still had that exposure, and I really value that, because it would have been so easy for my parents to have made a different choice, and well, it wouldn't have been easy for them. Financially very challenging, but they could have made a different choice. And I know I know that they sent me to a state school because they believed in that that was a political choice on their part.
Yeah, I think that was true of my parents as well. They were very keen that I should go to mainstream and that it must be a mixed school, because my mum went to an all-girls school, and she said, I'm not sending you to an all-girls school because you need to normalise being with boys, and also girls' schools are really horrible atmospheres to be in because it's just apparently really bitchy. And I can imagine in boys' school it's the same. It doesn't normalise interaction, so when you come out the other side, it's like you've kind of missed that really important part of your life where you're learning to socialise with other people around you. Yeah. And if you normalise people from all different walks of life being in that environment, it's going to help with empathy and understanding and just compassion all round, really. But yeah, I mean, even though, like I said, I still had those closeted views even in a mainstream school, but I think that is a lot to do with just the medical model and society being so ableist anyway. There's a lot of different things to unpack, I'm sure. And we all, I think we all know we have our privileges and we have our biases. And now that we're open-minded and critically thinking adults, we can learn to unpack those a little bit, which is really good. And it takes a lot of hard work. It's not easy. And it does take practice, and you have to actually take time to do it, because it's hard to challenge your own biases. Biases? I don't know. But yeah, if you work together and talk about it like we are, then there's a good chance you can do it. So, yeah.
I think from the male perspective, it's a different kind of difficult getting to a place where you're comfortable with yourself. You have the self-awareness to... I really like us coming back to what we said in talking about Barbie and Ken, in that Ken had to realise that he was himself first, and a Ken doll next, and a man after that. But you have to go, oh yeah, you're a person first, and then go from there. And then you can relax so much, because you're taught to fit into boxes. When you go to school, they try and put you into a certain box, and it's scary not knowing what you are without that box. And it's much easier to try and fit in the box and then let your anger and frustration out on other people, because you're scared of, what am I if I'm not Ken? What am I without Barbie, without these things that I've been taught are my defining aspects? And especially when, with men, you can think if you say that you're equal with women, that's you saying that you're weak. That's you saying that you're not strong. And rather than going, oh yeah, I'm just a person, they're a person, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. I can relax. And it there isn't a, people have to find their own way to that path, and a lot of people don't ever get that. And what school should really be is walking people down that path, helping people come to that conclusion, to have that self-awareness, to go, and just, if you just want to relax and let go of the pressure, just, that's all I want. I want everyone to just be able to chill the fuck out and enjoy themselves. That's what I want. And also, fucking thing that I've not talked about for a while, which I try not to talk about, is that schools are fucking just factories for capitalism. Mm-hmm. And they just train you that you travel to a place, you work all day at that place, and then you come home, and that's it. From the age of 11 to 18, I left the house at 7 o'clock in the morning and got back at 4:30 in the afternoon. That was like a 9-hour day, 5 days a week. And I didn't have a clue what was going on. I was just knackered and stressed, and that's just, that's catastrophic for children to be doing that.
Yeah.
And there has to be a better way, and we have to find that way for the sake of our children. I think that's a, thank you. That was a really interesting conversation.
Thank you.
We'll bring it to a close there. I hope you enjoyed watching or listening. We release new stuff every Thursday, and if you want to support us, you can go to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/gamingthesystem, or you can donate to us on a one-off basis via our PayPal. You send it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com. Until next time, bye-bye.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode of Gaming the System. If you want to support us, you can donate to us through our PayPal by sending it to wearegamingthesystem@gmail.com if you want to send us a one-off donation. If you want to donate to us monthly, you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/gamingthesystem. Until next time, bye-bye.